Alright folks, and welcome back, of course, with an episode of Casting Conflicts here, where we're in our second matchup for the month of March here. When we looked last time, Banana took a strong victory over Alan to claim at the moment the current top spot on the leaderboard here. But today, we're of course getting into another one of those top leaderboard slots here, as DeathsAdvocate looks to take on Asteroiy in what's set to be a great match. Tweakin, tell us what we've got lined up for today.
Yeah, we have DeathsAdvocate's deck. You know, just the bare minimum. You know, you got the Rat Hovels, you got the Unholy Altars, you got the Racket, you got the Undead. So, you know, pretty cut and dry. You know what you're going to get from DeathsAdvocate. You know what you got to watch out for. You know what you got to target. But if you take over that Asteroids deck, not as cut and dry as DA's deck. You know, you got a lot of things to worry about. And not only that, those units gonna be kind of hard to kill. You got the Griffin, you got the Shogun, you got the Wraith, a lot of high health units that could potentially become an issue with DeathsAdvocate. So I think what's gonna come down to it is, can DeathsAdvocate get those early buildings down, get those blacksmiths, those armories down, those necromancers down? Because if he can, then those high health units maybe not as scary as they could potentially be if you know, if you're just spawning out 1/1 rats or 2/2 zombies. So it's going to be an interesting game. You know, personally, just looking at the deck matchup, I don't see Asteroiy coming out with the set victory. However, Asteroiy is a very good opponent. He's a very good player. So, you know, I don't want to mark him. I don't want to
If anyone can get the
cross
job
him out
done,
just
it's
yet.
Asteroiy. If anyone can get the job done with the deck.
Right. So I'm sure we're gonna see some crazy, you know, spear crash plays and some other funky things. But if I have to give the edge to anyone, gonna have to give it the DA.
That's
gonna
what,
have to give it the
that's
DA
what
for
we're
this
honestly
one.
hoping for to see. Asteroiy's been kind of promising after each episode so far that he's going to get the Spirit Crash victory off. And I'm really hoping for him, especially because this would be a great deck to do it against, considering you involve all those swarm elements from the altars and the hobbles. Just popping a huge Spirit Crash would be absolutely satisfying, just to watch everything kind of glow up in smoke just for the time being. But again, we have yet to see if that's going to be happening here. I do think I agree with you at this point. If Death can really get that early aggression going here, get his early game set up here, it's going to be very difficult for Asteroiy to even find the victory in that matchup here. And we've talked about it before, right? How DA's deck is really just focused on putting down the units, and if you give him time to set up, you're ultimately going to regret it in the end. So let's see. I mean, I'm curious to see if Asteroiy's deck can really stop that from happening, but of course there's only one way to find out. Let's go ahead and jump right into game number 1. Alright folks, and welcome back, of course, another, well, back to the battlefield, I should say, because we've already started this video. But anyway, of course, got a nice starting hand here from DA, looks like. The Lumberjack and the Hovel, got the Fear. Oh, you love to see it. You love to see it. Yeah. You're leaking behind the scenes, but regardless here, yes, Asteroiy is taking the cereal while he's playing. We don't have a rule against eating while in combat, so. Oh jeez, okay, Asteroiy going up all the emotes here. I'm ready for DA, because DA has no hesitation for mute buttons. We saw that last time with Bolas, so I am fully expecting a just flat-out mute button to come out here at any moment here. But overall, not a bad start here. We've got the Hovel on DA's side here. We've got a Lumberjack from Asteroiy's side. Could see a lumber trade-off here going to turn 3 if Asteroiy decides to move that in closer. I do know that Asteroiy is a bit more hesitant with his units, though, because, of course, his deck likes to run on that you know, on the funny cards, things like Spirit Crash, things like E-Strike here. So unit conservation is something that he does want in matches. We'll see if that comes to fruition here. So we're going to see probably double Hovel, at least at this point, from DA here. Masuda. I mean, if he does run in the Masuda though, the idea is that I think DA can easily pop a trade, and at least definitely from the 2 rats coming out of Hovel. Certainly, certainly. Right, but now this is what I'm worrying about for Asteroiy, right? Because we know that DA's deck is a deck that if you're allowing it this much room to build and grow, it becomes a deck that is very hard to control once you're in the late stages. So I feel like this is a bad matchup for Asteroiy in a way, because just looking at how his deck operates, I think he plays a little bit slower here, and that's not the game you want to play against the Swarm deck, because of course if you allow them to setup time, they can come at you really hard. See, like, we're already getting a bunch of small tokens out here. DA can place his armory, now we might lose that Wraith. I don't think we will, but we're going to be damn close to losing that Wraith. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. Right, right. It was a bit of time between when we did this and when we did the introduction, so the cards are maybe be a little blank at the moment here. I do know for a fact though that this does set up Asteroiy nicely for some Spirit Crash stuff with this right here, especially because it's being pushed so aggressively. If that's the idea, we'll block it off with this sort of rat positioning here, so that way Wraith can't get into a sweet spot to do 7 to face. But I don't think that's what he wants to do. I think Asteroiy needs to do a bit of cleanup here, at least to maintain this board. Slow it down before it gets too incredibly wild and uncontrollable for a deck of Asteroiy's level to deal with. But I mean, what is the play? Mm-hmm.
His priority here is, of course, firstly the Drake, the 3/5 Drake on his castle, but the next after that is definitely all the armories and the buffs that Reaper has in his deck.
Alright, so of course we're running into the castle here, of course, clearing out, I believe, I missed the play to get rid of the rat, but we certainly look like we're
Dissipate.
getting, oh, Dissipate, that's right.
Hmm.
Oh, I see the rat in hand now. Yeah, I was just fixing an audio issue. The viewers couldn't hear you for, I think, like the first minute of the game, first minute or two. So, oh, I'm so good at this. I'm such a content creator. But anyway, hopefully that shouldn't really affect too much into the matchup here. As we go ahead, we're going to see a bunch of rat trades, at least to get rid of this Wraith, it looks like. We're debating on getting this 0 rat out of our hand, which, yep, it's got to go.
Hmm.
We're going to put this in, I believe. Yep, we can run in the rat. Yep, do a bit 2 there. We can move the rat up 1, follow the Acolyte. And that should be a great position for a DA's deck. And a very hard one for Asteroiy to recover, too. He's got no unit presence on the board here this late in the game here. DA's got the Dream set up, having those hovels in the back, the unit generators, the global buff. Everything is working so smoothly for him at this point.
Yeah, it's going to be, Asteroiy is definitely in a hole right now, especially with Wraith being his only option here. I wouldn't be surprised if, I mean, we could see a whole lot of things. We could see a Dagger Storm, we could see a Blue Firebolt and a Rat. We could see just a Vampire push up and the Rats push up, and that'll be the end of his turn. So Reaper definitely has some options during this turn.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, just going back to Asteroiy deck, you really can never count him out. You know, there's been a lot of games where he's been in this exact position and has still made, uh, I want, not maybe like a comeback, but he has still put up a very good fight where potentially one or two moves away from actually making a comeback. So I wouldn't rule out Asteroiy out just yet.
No, neither would I, especially because his deck is more focused on sort of the surprise, knock out your castle in the blink of an eye kind of maneuver here. Things like E-Strike, Spirit Crash, all very curious ninja spells that just can snap right out of nowhere and completely destroy someone's hopes and dreams here, like that Spirit Crash.
I was gonna say he just DA just kind of set him up right there for a Spirit Crash.
Yeah, it did happen, but is that going to be enough for Asteroiy to recover here? Unfortunately, I do not think so. I mean, granted, DA's got no cards in hand to play this turn, thanks to all of the spells combined with no Asteroiy units to potentially burn here. But it's very
But the
good.
cards that Reaper does have are very good defensively. Two
yeah.
Dragon Storms, Blue Firebolt, Dagger Storm, a Fear for extra draws. So even if I'm DA and I don't have any units, I'm still liking my hand because I can just stall and just keep continuously spawning two more rats that, you know, eventually will probably just swarm Asteroiy. Because we're only on turn 9 until sudden death kicks in, and another rat hovel comes in.
Jesus Christ. We're debating Dragon's Fire here, which looks like we do pop that off. We can't really reach into that last rat. We're going to fear the Mana Core, which is a very interesting choice here. I guess it's because we don't want to lose a rat, but I mean, still, we're neglecting damage on castle, but I guess in the long run that's fine. We don't really leave room to play any additional cards though either. We're missing that extra gold that from the fear to play another rat hovel. Which again,
yeah, I would have played the rat hovel. Personally, I would have played the rat hovel down and used that fear for something better, like this Windfall Griffin right here. As I say that, we draw up Mercenary's Execution, though. So it's just, right now, I mean, DA is just, with every card that he's drawing, just has the perfect answer against Asteroiy. And at this point, I don't think Asteroiy has any answer. I mean, having a Fat Bard out, gonna have only 2 cards.
That Griffin was his absolute last hope to get on castle for some kind of sneaky E-Strike or something. I could feel it. There's pretty much nothing else I think that Asteroiy can even remotely respond with at this point to even swing the game here. So that is going to be a clean game 1 from DA. A little Spirit Crash, a little funny there, clearing the rats, but yeah, not enough here. And we're going to have a bit of a stream crash. Yeah, there we go. We're going to get back, and yeah, nothing's really changed. And it looks like, I think we can just move in a couple of these rats, right? Yep, move that up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah,
he's not going to be able to kill him, but it's pretty much over.
The Spirit Crash was, I think, Asteroi's last attempt, hoping the Griffin would survive long enough to pop some kind of big explosion, but was never able to get it off. I did think if Asteroiy did this earlier in the game, that big Spirit Crash, we would have pick off the back hovels, we'd be looking at a much different game, but yeah, it's just unfortunate that we're seeing it crumble the way this is. He'll throw out the Respect, he knows it's over, just gonna do a funny icon. I'm hoping DA is merciful and just ends it. At least let him keep. Okay, he does. Thank God.
He is. DA is he's a respectable opponent.
Word. So with that being said, folks, game number 1 wrapped up in the books here, the win going to DA. Let's go ahead and break down that game number 1 here as we move into our post-match. Alright, folks, of course, coming back after game number 1, and yeah, not really a surprise to me and Tweakin, to be honest, but of course, game number 1 going to DeathsAdvocate in very convincing fashion, hitting the absolutely perfect curve, the ideal setup that he needed to establish for his early game here. We said if he got it, he was going to win, and look what happened to Tweakin. He absolutely just won.
You know, just looking at what he had in his hand, I didn't like it from the get-go. I didn't think that DA was going to have any problems. Just having all those early rat hovels, the armory, the blacksmith. There was really no way DA could lose that game unless Asteroiy was somehow able to get off Bestial Rampage Centaur or Spiny play. So Asteroiy was just from the start pretty much was had his back against the wall and pretty much trying to claw his way out of that hole. He did, however, there was a point in the match where I thought that he could do a little funky stuff when he pushed that Wraith a little bit too,
Oh yeah.
very aggressively, and we kind of suspected, or at least you suspected, that Spear Crash was going to come into play. I think Asteroiy was trying to get it right below the castle so that it would take out both the rat hovels and do damage to the face. But DeathsAdvocate had a great play, and instead of making a mistake that I would assume most players would be to block the buildings for a centaur or a companion, or a centaur or a spiny play. He actually blocked the Wraith from being able to get in front of his castle to take out all the buildings, all the rats, and do damage to the castle. So that just goes to show just how much game awareness these players have in this this league. So props to DA for thinking ahead, for thinking, even if Asteroiy does get a companion off, one building loss is a lot better than two buildings lost. So I think that play alone was the play of the game.
Certainly, and I mean that kind of makes me, wonder a bit here. Like maybe Asteroiy could figure out how to squeak in some movement buffs here, because I feel like, especially with things like Wraith and Griffin, if they were just one tile closer, they could have been able to do some massive damage alongside Spirit Crash.
Right.
So it's something to consider, especially when you have clunkier things in the deck like Icon and Rider. It makes you wonder, like, if that's a possibility he's maybe considering of moving forward in a couple of these additional matchups that he's got. Because I mean, right now, while his deck has been able to do some great things, it's starting to falter a bit. Now that players know what he's on, how he operates, it's going to be harder for him, I think, to win games. So.
Right, and I think if my memory works with me, I think we mentioned that Asteroiy should try to add in some movement bugs the last time we casted an Asteroiy matchup. And, I think it would work well, because now, to your point, after, Asteroiy having a couple of matches under his belt, people know that, his big answer and his big play is Spirit Crash or Eternal Strike. So if you're able to if you're not able to at least kill those high health units, but just effectively weaken them to the point where Spirit Crash is only doing maybe 2 or 3 damage, it's not going to have that much of an impact as Asteroiy would want it to have. So, just giving that movement buff would allow Asteroiy to effectively play that Spirit Crash on his own terms at full health, instead of, just saying, well, I have it in my hand. DA weakened my unit down to 4 HP. I'll just play it just for the laughs, doing only 3 damage. When if he would have add just one buff, he could play it 2 spaces or 1 space back, protecting the unit and having that full damage. So I think in the long run, Asteroiy would benefit for having just some more movement cards. I think personally he should add a swiftness just for more draw. And also, you can play it on a crew route to make it even more deadlier.
Right, certainly. But, I mean, with that being said, folks, we do move into Game 2. Of course, DA with the set point potential for the set. I don't know why I said that twice. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump right into Game number 2. Alright, folks, and back to match number 2. Of course, DA with the set point, like we mentioned moments ago. And another great starting hand from DA here to start things. Oh, even more so with the Lumberjack. Oh, my lord.
Asteroiy decided to run with the same colors. Interesting. Maybe a funny bounce with some Beast. Hopefully something where we get more units on the board facing DA's just constant swarm of units. That's just my hope.
I mean, we're seeing a little bit of that here. Injured Trent coming out, making an appearance here. Of course, a very interesting card. You don't really see it too much because there are better options. But when he does come out in high-level play here, we might think that Forrestervolt is not too far behind. If we see one of those, I don't know, that might be exciting. I don't think we've seen Forrestervolt here yet in casting conflicts.
Right. Yeah, DA smart with putting down the unholy altar. I mean, your deck is. Oh, we're gonna see a centaur come out, maybe.
Centaur
Looks like it.
Rampage. Okay, so just on
Nope.
Centaur. Or Spiny Rampage, excuse me. That would have been a lot better, but Centaur is equally fine here. Good taking out the Hovel as well here, preventing the faster units from getting on the board here.
Yep.
If ever the choice between Hovel and Altar, you always take the Hovel when the time arises, unless you're in more of the late game, which you might want to take out the Altar just to protect yourself from Raka, but hey, I mean, taking out a spawner is still great nonetheless. We're going to see Dagger Shot
Right.
hit that Centaur, though, clear it off of the board here, getting that away and out. Responding with a Lumberjack here, and so far, pretty better back and forth here for Asteroiy. Blech, can't speak today.
Until a blue firebolt comes out,
Oh.
and then we draw a Raka. So now we should have took out the rat hovel.
The Altar, you mean, yeah.
Or yeah, the altar.
See, now the question becomes, do you blue fire this, or do you set up a vampire and hope that that wizard can't do funny stuff here? Because we are looking to set up the vampire, potentially. We have the gold to do so.
Personally, every time I see a wizard and I see druids, I'm always trying to get rid of those wizards. Just because if, somehow he gets put onto a rampage, now that blue firebolt effectively becomes ineffective. And now you're dealing with a 4/5 rampaging wizard,
Yeah.
which is going to be much harder to kill, even with. I mean, I guess DA's mind, even if that does happen, he just has to maneuver around for one more turn, and then he can mercenaries execution it.
That, or he can blue firebolt, gain the lifesteal back from the vampire, or from the wizard with the vampire, so that way it's not really a total loss. It really depends on what Asteroiy does here to really manipulate this wizard, depending on where he goes with it. Like you said, the rampage or the
mhm.
rampage combo. Rampage is just so easy for
Well,
me.
yeah, like the Ramrus rampage, the
Yeah,
Ramp.
I guess, yeah. But regardless, I mean, Rampage, whether he decides to push it back, it's another story if that comes out. Asteroiy is quite a few cards up on DA, a whole 3 more at the moment here, so he definitely got some options to work with. And this much deliberation at least tells me that there is some sort of plan in the works.
Right, and I think Asteroid finally kind of found DA's Achilles heel is running with red and green. You don't really have that many draw potential. So that's why DA was pretty
Oh,
reliant on
no.
having those having those buildings. So if he since Asteroid was able to take out at least just one of those buildings, now effectively kind of stops DA's power. Pushing power. As I say that, he's drew a top deck to a fear and another unit. But we're gonna blue firebolt the wizard and then follow up with the faithful Drake.
Yeah,
But now we only have 2 cards here.
this is a bit precarious for DA because while he's in such a commanding position on the board, something like Beastmaster here can swing things around if he's not careful here, or better yet,
Oh,
Koru. Koru is a sneaky card that's going to definitely do some good cleanup here. You can't target that with execution now, can you, DA? You can't really target
now,
that.
now if I'm DA, oh, okay. So here's the question for DA, and this is gonna be where yeah, okay. So this is where the real experienced players come out to shine. You're looking at your hand. You got a blacksmith, you got a rack, and you got a mercenaries execution. And you have one building. Do you push your faithful Drake and your blacksmith, or do you just hold back and push your zombies forward because you're lacking on units, you're lacking on draw, and if
I
Aster
think you just
somehow is
push.
able to, you just push and just hope that you're able to just muscle out Asteroid until
I mean, I
you
think
can
that's what
take out.
DA is going with here, because he already has such a continuous stream of zombies. I mean, you see the line of zombies literally right there. He just has
Right.
these bad boys march, and just Asteroid has not been able to respond to them as effectively as I think he wants to. While that can change, though, with something like a Beastmaster appearance, which could do wonders for this deck, it is not going to come out at the moment here. We do get the Armory, which is great. It keeps our core alive to control a little bit here. Okay, Blacksmith is also additional follow-up, which is great. You love to see it here. This is going to force the zombie to trade with the Blacksmith, perhaps, and just take a little bit more of DA's bodies off the board.
Now, do you Mercenaries Execution the Blacksmith to potentially ramp into a Raka next turn?
That is the question. I mean, at that point, though, that kind of does telegraph an appearance
It's a
of
risk.
Rakanoth. It is. It
It's a
is.
risk. But just looking at your hand, you really don't have anything going for you. You have two spells. The Dagger Storm is going to help immensely to take out that Kuro.
I would prioritize face damage here. I would ignore the armory, to be honest. You have such an advantage already in terms of castle health, where I think just aiming on that will win you the game here. But we go for the armory, it looks like. We're a little hesitant here. We don't play the execution, so we're not going to ramp into Rakanoth into this next turn here. Although Demon Hunter, that is scary. Following up with
For the time being,
well.
until you see Mercenaries Execution just sitting pretty in your hand, and another building, which is going to help Reaper just that much more.
Yeah, I think these colors are just such a dominant matchup against what Asteroiy brought to the table here that, you know, whatever counter Asteroiy had in mind, it's just not really showing the fruits of labor here. The Kori was good, but that was pretty much the only worthwhile, impactful play we had seen from Asteroiy at this point here. While having a couple of cards, at least 3 more than did at any given point during the matchup, it's so difficult to favor him, because now we're going to see what Raka hit the board, and that potentially, I think, just ends the game if we're not at lethal. I mean, we definitely just clear the board here, but oh my lord, it's gonna be
Faithful
tough.
Drake will have to
maneuver back right in front of the castle.
Either right in front of the castle or right above the castle, to ensure that you kill all the units and still do castle damage. Unless Asteroiy somehow has like a Panda or a Dissipate for his next turn to deal with the Raka for the time being, or maybe a Detention. I would rather see a Detention than a Dissipate, but not a lot of people run Detention.
Right, but I mean, even then, it's just so difficult at this point. Because now we're set up in this perfect spot here where the Drake runs in front of the castle. We pop Raka, and that's just gotta be game. There's literally no recovery here for Asteroiy. His card advantage is gone here. DA's got so much more board presence, and meanwhile Asteroiy's sitting with an open board and only 10 gold to deal with both the 4/7 and the continuous stream of new and fresh spawned units at his face.
Yeah, I just didn't like the colors that Asteroiy picked. I think he could have picked better combinations of cards for going up against a swarm. You could have gone Mystic Rats. You could have done No Interaction or Last Will. I think you just needed to implement more burn to target these buffs, target the buildings.
Right.
I just don't think purple and white, even though it can be a good deck choice and a good deck combination, I don't think it matches up well against the Swarm, which we saw in these 2 games.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I'm definitely curious maybe as to why Asteroiy went the strategy that he did. We'll have to elaborate that in the post-game interview. But with that being said, folks, we do have to take a look at how game number 2 went down. So let's go ahead and jump to that post-game right now. Alright, and game number 2 comes to a close. Tweakin, what a interesting approach to game 2 Asteroiy had for this one. Going with the same colors, and by the looks of it, a more, I guess, classical style of OTK here. I mean, I'm seeing things like Demon Hunter, the 1 copy of Multi-Strike. Definitely something that is interesting to see coming out of Asteroiy.
Yeah,
It leaves you speechless.
it leaves me speechless. I want to say just looking at his deck, I can understand where he was trying to go with it. Having the Vanishing Strike to maybe pair with the Centaurs and the Spinies just to kind of buff up, just get more companions, or play it on a wizard for extra damage. Trying to take out DeathsAdvocate in one big swing or in a couple of swings, but I just don't think it matches up well, or I don't think it did match up well against DA's deck. I mean, you have Dragon's Fire that will take out pretty much all these, depending on if he has an armory out or not. And even if he does, he has Blue Firebolt to take it out. He's got Dagger Storm to deal with units to deal with the Kuru.
The racking
it's just
off.
the rack up.
Racking off.
It was just I just don't agree. I can like the Demon Hunter. Yes, it's a good play. But as we saw, the mercenaries execution was there. So like, I could understand where Asteroiy was coming from. I can understand. I came in with the game with purple and white. I want to finish the game with purple and white. But going up against a swarm deck, I just don't think purple and white are the best combination to go against it. Personally, I would have played something like Mystic Rat's Last Will, no interaction, just to take out all those buildings. Because if we look at DeathsAdvocate's hand or deck for a moment, you only see, I mean, his big units are Mordok, the Vampire, and Aculite, and Faithful Drake. Outside of that, all his units are pretty much from spawners, and he's got Raka. So if you're able to take out the Mordok, the Vampire, and the Faithful Drake, and the Aculite, and the Unholy Altar, you're basically going up against shamans and rats. So personally, I just don't agree with Asteroiy's deck in this match. In this series, we saw that DeathsAdvocate pretty much swept the board against him in all games. Asteroiy did hold up his own in that second game towards the early and mid game because the Centaur was able to take out that early rat hovel. But as we saw just from DeathsAdvocate's buildings, he was just able to slowly just strangle Asteroiy until he was unconscious.
Right, that is certainly a way to put it. But yeah, I'm definitely more curious on what Asteroiy was thinking here. Tweakin, how about we actually go take a chat with those players and just exactly see what Asteroiy was thinking for game number 2.
Please, because I am dumbfounded right now.
Alright, let's go ahead and take a chat. Alright folks, of course we are coming back with the players after that quick little 2-game set there. And DA taking another set win. You must be feeling pretty good, remaining undefeated here in Season 2. How did you feel about this matchup for you against the purple-white?
I mean, I had absolutely perfect openers both games, like hovels, spheres, lumberjacks, like couldn't have been better. Now, purple-white is definitely a combination I'm scared of, because companions plus bonus movement, plus potential first strike abuse, if he gets companions at the right time, I can get really shut down. I've got a lot of answers to first strike abuse, but just if things happen in the wrong order, it can be bad news. But nothing happened in the wrong order, so it was just a bit too. It was unfortunately fairly one-sided. Like I just sort of ran things down the middle.
I know, and it just showed off the power of what Swarm can do on a perfect curve and a perfect opening situation like you had. So if you don't mind, D, I'm going to actually maybe focus more on Asteroiy for this one, because there is a couple things that you want to ask him just about his thought process, at least going into the second matchup here. I know Asteroiy, unfortunately, not able to do a whole lot in this game here, but talk to us quickly about the second matchup here, where you decided to go with similar colors. What was sort of the battle plan you had moving in against the Swarm, knowing what you had to deal with, and just sort of revisiting similar faction combinations to do so?
Well, this casting conflict season is my plan is pretty much to stick to Ninja Druid. Probably won't see me move off it. And I also knew that it already has some good tools against Swarm when it comes to bestial range and being able to play ranged units, and having companions. And there's a couple other things that it has going for, such as Koru Rampage. And if you get Koru Rampage going, you can get a lot of work done that way as well. And I figured if I could get a decent start and get down some units, get some removal, out of DA, where like we saw where he went through 2 of his dagger storms, and that's when I was like, okay, now I can start playing demon hunters. Like my armory was on the board. He didn't have a bolt. These demon hunters, they're gonna hit the board. And he had the mercenaries execution, and from there it's not a whole lot left to do.
It was sort of a very telegraphed execution into the Rakanoth on our end, which kind of just made it so much more crushing on our end. But hey, definitely a solid plan there that I thought you have. At least me and Tweakin going into it, we were kind of curious, we're kind of wondering like what direction you would decide to go into. But now, again, it makes more sense when we talk about it now, when we saw things like the Demon Hunter. So that was really cool to see here. But I mean, Tweakin, that's gonna be it for me. I mean, the 2 matches were as seemingly straightforward as they got. I don't know if you had anything else for these guys, but
right. I mean, we personally didn't expect much from the first game. We thought that just from the deck combinations and the deck matchup that we thought DA pretty much had a stranglehold on the first matchup. So we were thinking that maybe Asteroiy would come back and make a good fight in the second game, which he did. Towards the middle and mid game, I thought Asteroiy played a lot better and had more answers, being able to take out that rat hovel early, pretty much being able to stop DA's initial push. But it just, as the game progressed, just the lack of draws in both players' decks, just from the color combinations, and just DA's ability to just have constant answers when they matter the most, having that the dagger storm to take out the crew, having the mercenaries execution to take out the demon hunter, and then ultimately having the Raka to take out the rest of Asteroiy's units. I don't think Asteroiy could have done anything different. I think he made the correct plays for his deck choice, and I thought DA played exceptionally well and held on to mercenaries execution for the best possible time. I know me and you discussed there was a point in the game where he could have potentially mercenaries execution the blacksmith to play the Raka, and you know, if he did that, would there be a different outcome?
I saw his deck list in the channel. I did not want to get Finward to death. I knew strike abuse was a possibility. I'm like, I'm in no rush for Raka. I'm just gonna wait. I'm in a good position, no reason to waste my resources. There was only like one turn in the game that like I was really thinking and not sure what to do, and that was the turn I'm like, all right, do I burn off that wizard or do I play vampire?
Right, yeah.
That was the only really tough turn.
Were you kind of worried about maybe him playing like a ram or sort of beast and then pairing it with like a rampage?
Yeah, just I figured my thought process there was, okay, to kill this vampire, he needs to spend a companion. And companions are really what scare me the most. So you know what? I will let that wizard live in the hopes that either this will just work out really well for me, or I'll burn a companion.
And in the worst case scenario, if you know, something happens where he puts a rampage or a buff card on it, you have in your back pocket a mercenary's execution, and you just have to survive one more turn, and you can just take out the wizard. So I think it was a smart play. I think it was the correct play in the long run. So I don't have any questions for the players. I think you kind of answered all the questions for me, and I just thought they played exceptionally well.
And again, just to echo what they said, I think you played perfectly. I just, I had a damn near perfect hand.
Yeah, it was still
an end game, both games. It was brutal.
It was still a good, nuanced game.
Right.
But, I mean, with that being said, before I do close it out here, I just want to get some final thoughts for DA here. This is your third set here, continuing to remain undefeated here. How do you feel moving into the rest of the season? Looking ahead at some potential competitors down the line here, are you feeling good? Are you feeling nervous? Because you're right now more positioned towards that top leaderboard section here, definitely looking towards potential playoffs. So I just kind of get your thoughts real quick.
Is there a specific player that you want to play against?
There's lots of good players. Not really. I just want to not have to encounter no interactions. Like I'm not worried about beating it. I just here to I'm in here part to win and part to have fun. So
If there's one player that you have not played yet that will worry you the most, who do you think that player is?
I suppose let me take a look at the roster here.
Maybe not worry, but who do you think the best fight against your deck?
I mean, in general, druids tend to be, like green white tends to be some of the hardest counters here.
Which you already faced off in the first matchup.
That one, I mean, that was a brutal match. Though that was an intense set.
That was. I think one of the longer ones we had for this season, anyway.
So, I mean, with Beastly's core deck there, that one's a little nervous just because it's got early aggression and companions. Again, there's lots of good players here, so, the game 2 and 3 are pretty much who knows, but, just looking at the starter list, at this point, it's really only Beastly I'm concerned about being unfavored in game 1 right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's what I love about this game. Because DeathsAdvocate could have easily picked Banana, who is also undefeated and has pretty much dominated everyone, who had a commanding victory over Allen in his last match. But he decided to pick Beastly as the person that he's kind of most anxious to play against, who is yet to win a game. So it just goes to show that even when a player has yet to win a game, he can easily beat a player that is undefeated.
Oh yeah, I think right now while the leaderboard is fun, it's almost meaningless at the moment because we're filled to the brim with top-notch players right now. It's going to come down to luck and matchups for the most part.
Right.
All right.
So I'm excited. I'm excited for the rest of the season.
All right, and with that being said, folks, let's go ahead and take a look at how our leaderboard does get affected after today's set.